Hey everyone, Rho here. Today we are discussing the possible return of Lorgar, and just how this could affect the Lord Commander Roboute Guilliman. General spoiler warning to begin, as we will be discussing events from across the world of Warhammer 40k, so you have been warned. But, with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay. Now, since the lore-shattering return of Roboute Guilliman, we have had the luxury of being able to follow the Ultramarines Primarch through the events of the Dark Imperium trilogy, and we have most certainly seen a side of the Primarch unlike anything else, as he struggles to come to terms with this new Imperium, one quite unlike the one he knew 10,000 years earlier. However, to me, by far the most intriguing matter, and most frustrating to Guilliman himself, is the Imperium's fall into religion, and the rise of the ecclesiarchy. It's safe to say this is a huge shock to Roboute, who, as we know, left an Imperium still dedicated to his father's imperial truth. Though the Imperial cult's beginnings were arising during the heresy, it's clearly nothing that truly crossed Guilliman's radar in any real way. And yet now here we are. He is being forced to play a careful diplomatic game of politics to prevent the Imperium falling to a civil war. Such is the power of the ecclesiarchy. And just think about that for a moment. The Lord Commander of the Imperium, the Imperial Regent, a living, breathing Primarch, a son of the Emperor of Mankind himself, and he is forced to having to play politics to keep the ecclesiarchy on side. So clearly, you can understand why this has been such a thorn in Guilliman's side. So much so has this blind faith he has encountered, he's even resorted to reading the Letitio Divinatus, the fabled book written by his brother Lorgar, and the book that in truth became the foundation for the imperial cult and the future ecclesiarchy. The simple fact is, in being confronted by more and more sightings of his father's power, even Guilliman himself is being forced to reconsider his position. So what better time to add yet another layer to this narrative and bring back the horizon to the galactic playing field? Now, Guilliman and Lorgar have had an intertwined history, thanks to the raising of Monarchia. Guilliman and his legion ordered to destroy Lorgar's perfect city in punishment for his continued religious worship, thus sowing the seeds of hatred and the betrayal at Calth, all leading to Lorgar's invasion of Ultramar alongside his brother Angron. And while since then Lorgar has truly fallen to his chaos worship, being elevated to demonhood, I can't help but feel of all the traitor Primarchs Guilliman may want to have a conversation with, it would have to be Lorgar. While his reunion with Mortarion was nothing more but shouted words of hatred or words of scorn between warring blows, and pretty much the same with Magnus, I definitely think Guilliman would somehow want to speak to Lorgar. I'm not saying it wouldn't be upon a war zone, because it most certainly would be. Lorgar and the Word Bearers are dedicated to Chaos Undivided after all. Any arrival of theirs would be to bring the enlightenment of the ruinous powers. But for Guilliman to see Lorgar return now, of all his brothers, with all the thought and consternation the topic of their father's divinity has given him, I can't believe Guilliman wouldn't want to discuss some part of it at least with Lorgar. And again, out of all the Chaos Primarchs, I can see Lorgar embracing a moment of conversation at least, even if it's just to brag how far the Imperium has fallen. A reunion between two brothers, a momentary standoff before weapons are drawn, a moment's truce in the midst of a duel, as the poignancy of their embattled conversation overtakes the need for death, at least for just a moment. And I think the one thing that may pause their blows is Guilliman revealing he's read Lorgar's writings, because there's no way on earth Lorgar would expect to hear that. Never in a million years from his high and mighty brother of old. But that's the point. This isn't the Guilliman Lorgar knew 10,000 years ago. And that revelation, I feel, would be a genuine surprise to the Horizon. This Guilliman is very much a conflicted soul, facing a very real question of forsaking the one thing he has dedicated his life to, the Imperial truth. Yes, it was all about uniting and protecting mankind, but it was all beneath the blanket of the Imperial truth. That was always integral to everything about the Great Crusade. Guilliman is now within a world where that is all but gone, and one where it appears Lorgar may just have been right all along. And now here before him would be that very brother himself. There would just have to be some part of Guilliman wanting to talk to him, even as misguided as he believed him to be. The real mystery and intrigue of this possible future storyline to me, though, is how they would have Lorgar and his Legion return. I believe it is most likely to be at the head of his own crusade. But will it be a crusade of nothing but destruction? Or will we see more elements of the spreading of the word? A crusade of a saviour rather than destructor, bringing entire worlds into the fold of chaos. People kneeling to the Pantheon in their desperation for salvation. That could really be fascinating. Almost a religious war between the Pantheon and the Emperor. Something that could finally force Guilliman to forsake all doubts and ties to the Imperial truth of old. Finally fully embracing his father's new divinity and realizing it for what it is. Quite simply, the Imperium's best hope. And honestly, I can really see this evolution of the story being the perfect reason and situation to bring back another loyal Primarch. Firstly, we know Corax is actively hunting Lorgar, so it would make perfect sense for him to appear within the war zone. Now, I'm not talking a tabletop return here, just an appearance within a novel, arriving in the climactic moment between Guilliman and Lorgar, perhaps saving his brother, a brief reunion before departing on his hunt once more, his quest for atonement undone. But how much would that benefit the spirit of Roboute, knowing finally once and for all he still has a brother out there somewhere, fighting alongside him. Not only would it be a spine-tingling moment, but it would also be a nice way to bring back some of that Guilliman of old, that mental surety that he always possessed, helping him know that hope is still out there somewhere, that his brother, and maybe brothers, still live. On the other hand, perhaps the return of another Primarch would be the way to go. Just as Guilliman embraces this new Imperium truly, embracing his place as the son of a god, and thus his own divinity, you have the absolute no-nonsense lion arrive at the head of every single Unforgiven chapter. Oh man, what a moment that would be. Now this one is much more unlikely, but let's be real, what a narrative direction that would give us. Can you imagine the lion arriving back to an Imperium, where Guilliman is not only calling the Emperor a god, but accepting that he himself is a son of that god? Oh boy, that would not go down well with Lion L. Johnson. For emotional impact, I'd love the Corax appearance more, but for a sheer holy you-know-what moment, and possibly the better narrative going forward, it would have to be the confrontation with the lion for sure. As far-fetched as these further returns are, in a narrative sense I could see it heading that way, assuming we do get that Lorgar return first. I guess as always we'll just have to wait and see. But as always guys, what do you think? How do you think Guilliman would react to a Lorgar return? Would he feel the desire to speak to his brother, even if it is between warring blows? Or do you see something entirely different? That Guilliman would have no words for Lorgar, and simply see him as an example of everything that's gone wrong with the Imperium? And if Lorgar was to return, where do you see the narrative heading afterwards? Could we see a Corax appearance? Or maybe even the lion? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.